Whoa, that was a large super chat.
Testing. Wait. Testing.
Now, what if all of this was just a dream?
Now be quiet.
Oh, so Tommy had. Hello, my fellow Westorians. It is Saturday. It is the final predictions episode for Game of Thrones. Of course, we'll have predictions for spin-offs, books, other stuff, but it's the actual final Game of Thrones predictions episode. And that's pretty much something. It's a big deal, right?
Yeah.
It's not like the end, it's just a new beginning. But it is a very important milestone. And we're all so glad you guys are here with us and to enjoy this predictions episode, as well as the final week of discussion and review, whatever is coming. And, it's interesting because they haven't given us a whole lot to think about as far as actual teasers, actual images. The trailer was very unrevealing. They're pretty tight-lipped about what's coming. And there's a lot of possibilities, so we'll just be discussing different sort of forks in the road where things could go.
It's a big understatement. They haven't given us a whole lot. They're giving us nothing.
They've given us nothing. Of course, I refer to the trailer and pre-episode leaks. Not leaks. We don't discuss leaks. I mean stills and things like that. But we are gonna have to do a little bit of guessing, but that's what we're good at, and y'all are too. So between all of us and Ashea, we'll be coming up with lots of fun stuff.
Good at,
yeah, quote unquote, good at. Super chat from Tommy Pappas, aka Hema Helminth, the Sellsword Sentinel. For those craving content right after the episode, myself, as well as a few History of Westeros mods, will be live streaming on my YouTube channel at 9:30 Central, giving thoughts and reactions. That's Tommy's YouTube channel. We don't have a link for it, but we'll grab that and put it up for y'all, and I'll share it around on Twitter after the episode as well. The How mods also did a great panel at Ice and Fire Con, so you know they know how to bring it, and that should be a really good spot. So 9:30 CST tomorrow, right after the episode.
Speaking of panels,
10:30 Eastern.
Speaking of panels at Ice and Fire Con, we've got a schedule now for panels at Con of Thrones, right?
We do. That's right. Check out the schedule for Con of Thrones. Its schedule's just been posted yesterday. There will be a few changes. It's a big schedule with lots of moving parts. A couple things will change, certainly. But you get the bulk of it in now to look at, and most of it will stay the same, so you get a great idea. Shea and Sean and I are all on a lot of panels. So are a lot of other YouTubers and podcasters and great people from around the community. And of course, there's some of the very famous actors are going to be there as well. You can get $5 off your ticket price by using the code HISTORY, and we hope to see you there. It's Nashville in July, and it should be a lot of fun. It's a great time. Con of Thrones is super fun. Also, shout out to our friends over at Shire Post Mint, the coins they make for Game of Thrones and Conan and Wheel of Time and a lot of other, of course, Shire Post. Of course, they make Lord of the Rings coins. They're really, really well made, and we highly recommend them. We've got a sack of our own coins here that Yeah, I was going to say the sack that I like to play with, but maybe I shouldn't say that. Oops, I guess I did already. Anyway, get 15% off your own sack by going to Shire Post Mint and using the code HISTORY, just like the code for Con of Thrones. Hey, same code. How about that? Keep it simple for you. Now, let's get to it. Before we actually get into the material, we got to do a couple of announcements because as we're winding down the season, need to keep you all abreast of what our schedule's going to be like after the season. We're going to be doing 2 live streams a month going forward, in part thanks to reaching a Patreon milestone, and also because we like to do live streams and because they're a lot of fun. We have a lot of different things to cover. It looks like I put a poll up on Patreon, and it looks like y'all picked Tuesday and Saturday. I thought at first maybe we'd keep it on Mondays, but y'all prefer Tuesday and Saturday. So Tuesdays and Saturdays, once a month each. There'll be one Tuesday and one Saturday every month where we live stream. We'll be talking Game of Thrones. We'll be talking Song of Ice and Fire. We'll be talking just what's going on in the world of the fandom. We'll be talking about the prequel show. We'll be talking about The Winds of Winter, of course, whenever that comes out, and all sorts of other good stuff.
Can we talk about The Watchmen?
Maybe a little. And we'll have to see how it goes. And after that, we'll be doing a lot of, or rather, along those lines, we'll be doing a lot of analysis of what the show taught us and how it would be different in the books. Like, in other words, plots and character things that the show revealed, but that we have, as usual, great reason to suspect it'll be different or significantly different in the books. And as well, that's going to be really important with a lot of characters. A lot of characters are very different from show to book. And as we go back to the books, more focused, we want to make sure we keep those differences straight. You know, you don't want to mix your canons up. And it's hard to do because there's so many different things that are the same, and there's so many things that are very different. So there's a lot of value in delving into those things, understanding what makes them both tick, and helping keep them separate. Also, game streams will return. I'll be back to Crusader Kings 2 and possibly some of the other games I've teased playing, potentially. Haven't actually done that, but we'll definitely at least be doing Crusader Kings 2 and maybe some other games. And at the beginning of the season here, I set a goal. Well, not the beginning. Early in the season, once Jenny's song was released, I set a new patron goal for y'all to try to reach. I didn't think it would be coming anytime soon. I set it really high to give myself more time. And you guys have been so awesome that we're actually really close to it. We're under $100 from it now. And, well, I'm going to record Jenny's song on guitar and singing as soon as we reach that goal, or a little while after. I still got to, compose it and write it and do all that, but that's coming up soon. I better get on that. It's coming faster than I thought. And also give this, whichever pledge actually crosses the goal. In other words, whichever actual pledge pushes us over the milestone, I'm going to give the title Jenny's Westorian to you. And if you get a shout out, or I'll give you a shout out, that'll be included in it. So a little extra incentive there. So the trailer, we'll go straight into the trailer now. Or you have a comment?
What kind of goal to do a metal-fied version of Jenny's song where I play the drums?
Well, we'll set that. Well, maybe we could just do that also. Maybe we could do multiple versions. We'll see what we can come up with in the music dungeon, the black metal cells. So yeah, let's talk about just the basics of the trailer. Like I said, it doesn't reveal a whole lot, and then the kind of things you see in it are fairly straightforward. Jon and Davos walking through the ashes. Ashaya's got a shot of that, and it's a pretty quick shot, and it's a little different than what we're used to seeing, which is Tyrion walking through devastation, but we get that also. Tyrion walking through devastated battlefields has become sort of a recurring theme, I guess, and
motif.
Yeah, motif. It's the same. It was the same thing with him walking around Marine before it was destroyed. It's just Tyrion walking around, looking at things, shaking his head. It's just Tyrion's reaction hour. And we get the Dothraki celebrating, which is, they're very raucous in their celebration. It's meant to look a little intimidating, I think, because they're dangerous. they're dangerous dudes, those Dothraki, and they're supposed to be a little scary to the populace of King's Landing, who's never seen anything like them before, who have just and what they have seen is those Dothraki running through the streets, killing people. So it's not exactly the most encouraging sight for the people of King's Landing.
It's not as visually obvious, but I think the Unsullied are celebrating too. You know,
Okay.
they have a different demeanor,
Yeah.
but I think they're happy about this victory.
I would think so. They're, it's what their queen has told them their goal has been this whole time.
Yeah.
You would think that this would be, it's a pretty big deal, which is interesting because we talked about how it wasn't maybe the big deal for Dany as she thought it would be, and that's part of her consternation. And as she's coming down, we get this really beautiful, dark shot that reminds people of a lot of different things we've seen in other movies and in reality. It reminds people of, it's got some Nazi imagery to it, which is because it reminds people of the more recent shots of the First Order in the new Star Wars trilogy, most recent Star Wars trilogy. I wouldn't call it new, I guess. And when you see the stormtroopers all lined up and their giant flag and everything, and instead of the flags, you have smoking ruins. And it's not, and of course Dany's not a Nazi, but it's the theme is there, of conquest and destruction and authority. And that's is supposed to make people a little uneasy, if not a lot uneasy. And that's the idea. It's supposed to be like, whoa, this is dark. And we still don't see Dany's face, which is I'm really waiting to see. And we're gonna that's the great fork in the road here. Like, what direction does Dany turn?
She got a zit on her nose.
I think they could just remove that, right? Can't they just remove that in post-production like they removed the coffee cup? Speaking of, for people who haven't noticed, I am wearing a Daenerys Mother of Coffee Starbucks shirt here. You couldn't possibly get the reference, though, could you? Why would Daenerys and Starbucks have... I don't get it.
I want to take a moment to show off my shirt, too, by the way.
Oh.
It's Sunday Night Fever, Jon Snow, Staying Alive.
I have to say I extra appreciate your shirt today because this was another episode in which, episode 5 was another episode in which people just kept staying alive when they really should be dead.
Indeed. And so she's descending the steps with this amidst this smoke and destruction in the background, and sort of the conquering hero or conquering warrior, conquering dragon queen, whatever you want to call her. And Aria is still dirty. She hasn't showered yet, which, geez, come on. And she's looking past these Unsullied, which is a clear sign that she didn't just leave the city never to return. She's quite clearly still there.
It seems to me like these clips are just, we're going to pick up right where we left off. This isn't like 3 weeks later, even 3 days later. It might be 3 hours later, maybe, but I don't expect the whole episode will continue at that time frame, but I think we're going to start off right where we left off.
Yeah, I think I agree. We've got these aftermath shots, and it makes sense to do that. And it's not like there's, unlike other episodes, there's very little else they can do. It's not like, what are they going to do? Show the Iron Islands? Yeah, that's solved. Yara won the Iron Islands, and Euron's dead. That's done, right? Yeah. The North is going to have a reaction. They maybe get called to come down to King's Landing to submit to the new queen on the Iron Throne. That's a very standard thing that happens. You call all the subjects and have them give, their pledges of fealty and all that. Like Joffrey said, I want my loyal counselors to give their oaths of fealty within the week. That's very standard. Like Stannis would have done that. Robert Shirley did that when he first took the throne. It's very standard stuff. Except in this case, it's kind of scary because a lot of people are like, "Is she gonna just let me kneel? She just killed all these people. I'm a little nervous here." Some people will surely come and do their duty and just hope they leave with their heads. But a couple people got to be feeling a little worried. Tyrion being one of them. He set Jaime free, and Dany gave him that warning. So maybe we could start with some of these basics of how Dany will react, and the fact that we have such a condensed plot now. We don't have, like I said, anything to do with Euron. No more Qyburn, obviously. No Cersei and Jaime. There's just the North and King's Landing, and maybe whatever else they want to throw in as far as the rest of the realm getting involved one way or another, which we don't know that'll happen. It would make sense for it to, but they may just keep it tight with the characters we have now.
That's the thing I've been thinking about a lot as I take my notes. My note-taking system, I usually lay out the different characters involved on the paper, and I kind of clump it sort of geographically. Like I put northern characters up north and Essos characters in the east. Yep.
For Monday, we should take a picture of your notes.
Okay.
And I could put it in the stream and people could see it.
All right, yeah.
Pepe Sylvia all over.
Yeah, that is what it looks like. It's pretty sloppy. My handwriting's not good. It's a bunch of scribbles and lines. But the point is that I remember a couple seasons ago, I would have, I'm not exaggerating, 60 or 80 names on a page. You know, you have like each of these different spots or plot lines would have 4 or 8 characters involved. Like over in Essos, you'd have Dany and Barristan and Grey Worm and Missandei, you know, 5 were right. And then in the north, you'd have like Jon and Mance and Tormund and Sam and Gren and all the, and it's King's Landing would have 15 or 18 characters. Well, now there's only 15 or 18 total characters. If you try to think named living characters, I don't know if you'll get past 20, and you'll be reaching for like Royce, I guess. You know,
like is he even? Yeah, we know he's alive, but like he hasn't even had a line.
There's very few people. So especially when you're like speculating on like who's gonna kill Dany. Well, there's only a few possible people that could do it, and there's only a few named characters, and some of them it seems like just aren't even going to be present. You know, like Tormund's probably not going to be on screen again.
Yeah,
right?
make it in like a montage shot, epilogue-y thing. That's it. You know, like to see him smiling, petting Ghost or something like that.
But these characters aren't even present in King's present in King's Landing. It's no like 7 people. You know.
Yeah, there's no way he'll have like a role in this. I don't think. Yeah, you're right. That is so. You're right. They really have to focus on what they have here. So on one hand, it's like, how can they wrap all this up? On the other hand, well, at least it's all kind of just focused in this one area for the most part, and that at least helps them wrap it up without rushing. Although surely it will be rushed because the rest has been rushed, and it's just what we should expect. It's been rushed to this point, and we have to accept that because that's what we have.
Maybe they'll introduce the new Prince of Dorne and then show his jealous cousin kill him. They'll get through all that in this episode.
All the characters who we're not going to get strong Belwas, we're going to get Slade Stoneheart, we're going to get Victarion. All of them are going to show up at the end and petition Dany. He's like, look, the Blast King wouldn't let us do anything. They didn't even acknowledge our existence. Yeah. Will you please let us exist? So it's a big question, like we said, whether Dany will harden her heart. You know, the old, if I look back, I am lost. Or whether she'll show some remorse. And in general, how she'll react, because...
Can I say something real quick?
Absolutely.
Right here? Someone, Reality International, pointed out that in that shot from the trailer we shared, her Daenerys's braids are extra elaborate in that picture.
Super conqueror.
Yeah, exactly, because she has defeated a lot of people. Whether that speaks to how much she's down with what she did or not, I don't know.
She's going to have that huge bell put in her hair. Just walk
drag it behind her like a wedding dress.
Yeah, she'll have several Dothraki just carrying it behind her. It's like, geez, I love our queen. She's really great, but this is ridiculous. Come on, do we really have to carry this bell around with us all the time? Now,
didn't we say when she blew up the Sept, didn't a bell get flung across
that one
the
bell
city?
Did,
I wonder another example of that bell being symbolic of tragedy. You know?
Yeah.
Also, but the braids might also just be as simple as she's pulled herself together now. You know.
It could be both.
I guess she even had on her dragon last episode. So.
Yeah, that's true. And you know, it's a big deal too how she's gonna react because we should think back a little bit to some of the confusion of last week and try to maybe straighten a couple things out before we proceed. There seems to be, I think, some of the conversation, and some of this is definitely on the show. If not a lot of it, for not making this clearer. More and more people have pushed forward the idea that it was planned. That this was not, the snap wasn't Dany deciding to do this. It was that she was deciding to still do it. She had already planned on doing it. She didn't like the bells thing that Tyrion brought up because she'd already had her plan with Grey Worm to commit some kind of massacre to instill fear. So she was hoping the bells never rang. And when they did, she was like... she wanted more of the blame to be on Cersei because if she can keep wrecking the city, if Cersei hasn't surrendered, that can be politically put more on Cersei. But if it's an explicit surrender and she keeps going, then it looks worse for her. But she already planned on doing it, and that's the thing that I think is a pretty valid idea, and maybe that'll be more clarified here. But we're farther and farther away from there's any sort of mental illness here. But with still keeping the possibility that characters within the story will worry that she's mentally ill. And that's still very much alive. But I personally don't think there's any, I think it was planned.
I think that she could have had something along that lines planned.
Yeah.
Right? But like, it's almost impossible for her to have planned to even if they ring the bells on burning everyone. There's no way that was
she
her
didn't
plan.
know the bells
Right.
were going to ring. That was
Right.
that
She
was a
didn't know that
last
was
minute
right.
tweak to her plan that she didn't like. That's going to throw.
And
a
it does
monkey
make
wrench
sense the hesitance she had when Tyrion was pushing her to promise, and she like reluctantly gave a nod to Grey Worm. You know,
And Grey Worm
It's-
clearly had like. Remember, she said, "You'll know."
yeah.
When
I took that to be the moment she busted
I
through
did
from
too.
behind the
I
Golden
did
Company,
too,
but
but I
maybe it
can-
means when I start burning, you'll know. It
because
could've
that's
been
so
both.
obvious, right? Like, well, of course she means
And it-
rush the gates when the gates explode. Like
Yeah.
that's so
And it could have also
straightforward.
been similar to when Sansa kind of knew that she was not going to keep Jon's promise when he said
Yeah.
swear it, and how tough she seemed to struggle when she told Tyrion that she might have planned this and she wants to keep her word. She's still struggling. It's
Yeah.
still tough for her. But I still believe, even if it was quote unquote planned, like I still want to think a minute about what it was that planned. Did she plan to do that much destruction, to kill that many innocent people?
Yeah.
Maybe she planned on burning some portion of the city, knowing it would kill some innocents.
Well, it
But
had
I
to be-
still suspect
yeah.
some amount of bloodlust kicked in when she got going. you
Oh,
know?
I agree, and it's part of it is that she really had to work herself up to do that because she is, this isn't something that she would normally do. It's not in her normal code of ethics, so to speak. At least it's difficult for her. So that would explain why she has to like be kind of worked up to do it.
And that also contributes to the thought that I have that even if she wasn't insane, this is enough to drive someone insane. Accepting
be.
having done this.
It
is
might
not-
be. It might be. I don't know about that. I agree that it's possible, but I think it's going to be more like, this is kind of what she pushed for, and like Cersei, she's going to be cold and maybe distant and emotionless, but not, not actually insane or anything. I don't think they're going to do that.
Another thought that I've had, and we even talked a minute about how it can be confusing to talk about the generic idea of insanity versus the details of different mental illnesses, right?
Yeah.
And it's hard to. We have a decent amount of research on something like depression or PTSD or something, but we don't have a lot of research on the actions of tyrants. Right, we don't have something to
that's true.
study and define the mental illnesses that come from being in charge of huge amounts of people and being responsible for their lives and deaths.
Yeah,
and
or what
everything.
allows you
So
to like do this stuff in the first place. And all
Right.
that. Yeah, you're right. That's a good point. Very good point.
there could certainly be mental illnesses that we don't understand, that there's not a sample size for us to ever understand.
Yeah.
So.
So I'm guessing she's not going to feel a lot of remorse, or at least not show it openly, because that would be a path to removing this conflict they're setting up. Like if she starts to feel bad about what she did and is like, "Oh, I won't do that again." Well, then where's the conflict? That's partly what they're building up to, is making this final conflict really tragic without being too obvious about where it's exactly going. One thing I think is interesting about Cersei and Daenerys, to compare them, at least as queens, and how they can wield power, is, well, obviously Daenerys still has the Unsullied and the Dothraki, and that's very powerful. But it's not really, so much greater than any other army anyone's had. But the dragon, that's a huge difference. But the difference with the dragon compared to Cersei doesn't have a dragon, of course, but she had the mountain. And the mountain is a lot more intimidating indoors. Like, you can't bring Drogon in the throne room. So when Cersei's standing there at the throne, she has the mountain next to her. And not only is that intimidating a different way, which is a small point, the bigger point is that he's her protector at all times, whereas Dany walking around indoors does not have this shadow monster beside her at all times. She has her Unsullied, who are no joke. But that's different than... because there's no faking the mountain, right? I'm thinking, obviously I'm starting to think about Aria and other sneaky, maybe someone else sneaky. Aria is, of course, the by far the likely candidate. Aria can't, pretend to be the mountain, But she could maybe be an Unsullied. She could maybe pretend to be an Unsullied guard.
Yeah.
That might work. There's a thinking about all the different ways Aria could be get close to Daenerys, if she's presumably the one to do this, which she may not be. This doesn't have to be an assassination. Just if that's what happens... well, that's something that Cersei had that Dany does not. And I do wonder if she's going to name a Queen's Guard. If they'll bother with that, is probably the kind of thing they won't bother to deal with. It's too quick. But what we do think she'll have to do is summon people to kneel to her. And that is where we maybe get Sansa has to come down. And that is where things might get really interesting, because of all the people that are out there that Daenerys sees as a threat, Sansa's definitely one of them.
Yeah.
She doesn't necessarily see Jon as a threat, more like someone that rejected her. Maybe she's not happy with him, but he didn't do anything treasonous. He hasn't pushed his claim. She didn't order him to not tell the secret. That wasn't a direct order.
She
that wasn't
feels
a command.
betrayed. She
She
feels
does.
personally betrayed.
But she didn't see it as treason. Whereas Sansa she's worried that Sansa will try to remove her from the
Jon made Sansa and Arya swear. Dany didn't make Jon swear.
Right.
Now, by the way, probably because she knew he wouldn't.
Yeah.
But still, she probably should have tried to make him.
And maybe she didn't want to. I mean, she was approaching him as a lover and not as a king.
She just wanted him to
queen.
do it because he wanted to do it.
She doesn't want to order him around. Yeah, she still loved him at that point. And she didn't want to just, she doesn't want to order him to do something that he'll agree to do. That's not very loving, She still made that, to her credit, she definitely still put their relationship very high on, until it was not possible. She still wanted that, she still thought that was going to be a good thing. And she wasn't paranoid about Jon pushing the claim. She was worried about other people pushing Jon's claim. And that seems to be, she seems to have the right read there, because Jon has been adamantly, yep, you're the queen. But that's going to be a problem for him now, though, isn't it? He's like, you'll always be my queen. Wait, even after you shoot.
Yeah, I do think they're trying to create a parallel with him and Jaime, torn vows, split loyalty.
Yeah, and this conflict. And that's a really good conflict. It's a difficult, painful conflict, but that it is conflict, and it's very interesting.
It has been the reason, a primary reason he's been committed to her. Remember back on Dragonstone?
Yeah.
She turns to him for advice. She's mad because they had just lost the fleet and Castle Rock, and it seems like she just wants to burn everything, and Tyrion, everyone's like, no, don't. She turns to Jon, who's just showed up.
Yeah.
What do you think? And he's like, look, one reason you've got people following you is because it seems like you're doing things differently. But if you just go burn down King's Landing, people won't think you're doing things differently. And she's like, you're right, I won't. And he's kind of won over by this. Ugh. Is he still won over by this?
Yeah, that's a good question. Okay, let's start with some, or head into some questions here. A lot of good ones built up. And then we'll move on to more particular predictions and theories from Philip Wolf. This was a question asked earlier in the week, but it has some prediction to it, so we brought it back. The quote here, I've always hated the bells. They ring for horror, a dead king, a city under siege. And this is Varys. Varys says, a wedding? Tyrion says, exactly. And this is... given the times we...
Well, actually, you got it exactly a little bit differently. Varys says the first bit.
Oh, my bad. Tyrion says a wedding. Varys says exactly.
To be clear. Yeah.
Okay. In any case, this comes up, is brought up in a couple different places, and he's wondering if maybe this could foreshadow a wedding in the next episode. It's hard to imagine who would get married. I thought about this a bit, and there's not a lot of obvious answers other than... Dany being like, no, you're marrying me, Jon. That's it.
Sam and Gilly are finally going to settle down.
Make it official.
Not have a bastard. Actually, it's an interesting idea. I didn't even think about the idea that Sam might not want his child with Gilly to be a bastard.
That's true. Is that a little Jon Snow the second?
Yeah, it'd be Jon Snow the second.
Little new Jon.
Or would it be Jon Flowers? No, he's in the north. They're in the north. Depends on if they get back down. I don't know. Anyway,
it could be Sansa, second of her name.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, he said, "I hope it's a girl."
Yeah,
because Jon's like, "I hope it's a girl. Don't name it after me. My name's cursed."
I also don't think it's crazy for Dany to try to force Arya and Gendry to be married or something like that. Like we saw Tywin forcing marriages. It's common in the world. You could see reasons to need to kind of tie bonds together politically here. I even kind of wonder how much we're going to see Dany, especially given the idea that maybe she did think about this ahead of time. What else has she thought about ahead of time? She thought ahead of time about how it was Jon that was betraying her, even if Tyrion comes to say, hey, Varys told everyone. Well, it was Jon that, I wonder how much Dany has plotted things out. There have been many times where I think she's revealed her forethought. She's kind of savvy about how things are going,
Yeah. From Thomas Pappas, curious as we enter the last episode what each of your last meals would be. Now, this, of course, I like this question because we're talking about people being executed. So, it gives you this. That's what thinking about someone's last meal is appropriate for executions. He says, "Don't be shy. My last meal would include heroes, McDonald's chicken nuggets, chicken fried rice, and pasta." He wants all three of us to answer this question. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask the question now, but we'll answer it at the end. So now you guys have time to think about it. Shay, you can think about it. I'll think about it. And Sean, you can think about it. Shay, if you don't mind, can you move that question to the end so we don't forget it? Yeah. So and all of y'all out there, think about this question as well. What would you, if you're going to be executed, what would your last meal be? It would probably include dragon peppers if I was going to be, From Scott Westbury, what role will the Dothraki play in Westeros if Daenerys sits the Iron Throne? Will they be given lands to resume their nomadic lifestyle? Will they be content to spend sedentary time with her wherever she will rule from? Well, this is something that and a follow-up question: what happens to them if someone kills Daenerys? How would they be dealt with? Well, that is a question, isn't it? Would they just be like slaughtered or fight, or who knows? It's really tricky because that's part of the calculus, and it's something that George will certainly address. George isn't going to just forget about hand wave the Dothraki's presence in Westeros. He would have been dealing with them same questions we've been having all along, like. Are they cold? Like, what do they think about this place? Like, what's their deal? Like, we want to hear some thoughts from them.
I think this is a book question, honestly.
It is a book question,
I love this question, but the fact is that if you think about it for 2 seconds, they're not going to answer this question. We don't have a named character from we haven't all season. I guess we kind of had one that never spoke.
They hardly even said his name. It was just written on the off-screen material.
And maybe that is like a clue to where things are going. Like, that probably won't happen,
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting. Like the second part of the question, like, well, if Daenerys is killed, like, then what do they do then? Like, they're probably that's got to be part of it. Maybe if someone takes it upon themselves to kill Daenerys without thinking about that consequence, well, gosh, I don't know. Follow-up question or a related question from Dany the Dreamy: will we see Dany killed next episode? And has Arya left behind her vengeance in her list after her scene with Sandor? Well, this first question, will we see Dany killed next episode? I'm leaning yes. What about you?
I'm leaning no for a number of reasons. One is kind of just like we talked about. It's hard for me to think how things will play out with entities like the Dothraki if she dies. I don't see how they handle that. And additionally, I have this vision of the end being, I can't remember how often I've brought this up. I think in conversation over the past couple of weeks, I brought this up a lot, but I can't remember how many times I was being recorded saying it. But I think we're going to see her on the throne, depressed, alone, and many other characters. I again have many times thought about how we started off with the Stark kids with these naive ideas about what they want. Sansa wants to marry the prince. It's just not what she thought it was going to be. Jon wants to go to the walls. Not what he thought it was going to be. Dany wanted the Iron Throne. It's just not what she thought it was going to be. She's going to get it, and it's not going to be what she thought it was.
Yeah. And for Arya, the second part of the question about Arya...
just a counter argument with you, Sean. Like, you could say Dany wanted the Iron Throne. It's not what she thought it would be. You can also say Dany wanted to conquer, Westeros. It's not what she wanted it to be, and that doesn't require her sitting on the throne and ruling King's Landing.
True, but it also doesn't require her to be killed.
Yeah. Well, we'll see.
She could not be on Iron Throne and still not be killed. Like, maybe she goes back to Marine or, burns the throne and says no one's king. I don't know. But I feel like she's not going to come all this way to not sit on a throne.
We'll see. As far as Arya leaving behind her vengeance in her list after her scene with Sandor, well, she may have temporarily done that only to realize she's got to at least do one more. It's tough to say because will that be about revenge? I don't think that, Arya may be sad about these people she saw die around her, but I don't know if that's revenge. She didn't know them personally. Is there anyone in particular she wants revenge for?
There's a difference between revenge and vengeance.
I agree, and this might be more along the lines of like what the House of Black and White in their ethos. It's more of a mercy or someone that needs to die rather than you're not supposed to make it personal. Yeah, and this is. If she kills Daenerys because she thinks it's the right thing to do, or because it's a mercy to other people, or even a mercy to her, maybe that's a different calculus for her, a different reason, a different motivation for her to kill someone than all these other kills she's had. They've all been her list. So this it would be a turning point, but maybe a different kind of turning point, not a killing someone for reasons other than vengeance or revenge. But
she might feel like she's protecting the people. Like, we just can't have a dragon existing.
That's another theory, is that she won't kill Daenerys, but that she'll kill Drogon. But we'll get to that a little later. Definitely have some ideas on that. William Coupland says, for Season 8, Episode 2, I commented on no mention of Burn Them All, then queried whether we'd see this played out later. Well, I guess we did with the bells. What else was skipped over when we thought it may have been part of earlier episodes? What next? Have most people taken what's in prophecies too literally, expecting them to happen word for word, action by action? That's definitely a thing that happens, is we get a little too lost in the weeds with these prophecies, and we maybe miss other ways the prophecy could be true, like technically true, given tricky wording or clever interpretations. So we definitely should never take them too strictly worded, but we also don't want to be too loose with them. It's an interesting, tricky thing. The show never got too deep into the prophecies and their interpretations. They just kind of threw them out there and said, think about this, and used them to drive the characters rather than to tell a whole lot about what was going on. And that meant a lot, like Daenerys being told, you're Azor Ahai, or you're the princess that was promised, rather. That certainly means a lot to be told that. And so that I think is a big, how it motivates characters is just as important as a lot of the other stuff. What do you think about this question?
I think I think if we were to go back and watch it again, which I'm sure we all will, we're going to be like, there'll be a million things like that, a million little things of like, and I also think that some of those might not have been by design. It just might just work out that way or be a coincidence.
Well, and the other part that's missing, I just realized he's saying what else was skipped over. We're thinking about Bran's vision. The part that's missing is the king being killed. I mean, I guess we got that with Cersei dying. You could say that we did get that. But you could say that the Cersei wasn't the one saying burn them all. Cersei wasn't the one doing that. The closer analogy clearly is Daenerys. And if someone has to stab her in the back, well, not a lot of candidates for that, but that is part of the vision that we didn't see. Or if we did, it was Cersei, but I would think it's not. Next question is from Alexander Wilson. Game of Thrones director Alan Taylor said that George R. R. Martin told him the story was about Jon and Dany. I see that as coming to fruition at the last episode. Yeah, I mean, if you got to name the two most main characters, it's hard to argue that it's Jon and Dany, which is part of why it was really tough to see for a lot of fans to see Dany do what she's doing. And so if we want to think that is the most likely resolution, then we should see this as mostly about Jon's conflict and about Dany's conflict, and less about other people having to make this decision or the burden falling on someone else's shoulders. Like, it could be Aria, but there's less conflict in Aria dealing with Daenerys than there would be for Jon. Yeah.
There would be conflict for Tyrion, but still less than Jon.
Yeah, I agree. Because none of them had, in a relationship, even though it was brief, not only did they have a relationship, but Jon full-throatedly endorsed her and said, you'll always be my queen and stuff like that. Tyrion is in a different spot as far as that goes.
There's further conflict for Jon, too, because he potentially could argue, I'm the one, not you anyway. It should,
Yeah, that's
not
true.
only are you doing these bad things, but you're not even supposed to be doing anything. It's supposed to be me. And he's been avoiding that. And I've even thought of that as being a virtue of Jon, not being ambitious, not trying to have power. But whether it's meant to be or fair to think of it this way, you could see how this is Jon might feel like he's failed. If I had just taken control myself, none of this would have happened.
If I had let them make me king.
Yeah.
That's a good thing. Like, I want that to be more discussed openly and more people to realize that Jon has some responsibility too. Obviously, he didn't burn these people. He didn't, yell Dracarys and burn these people, but people warned him. But smart people that he recognizes as smarter politically than him warned him. Varys warned him. Sansa warned him. They were people he recognizes as politically savvy. They told him, and he just was like, "No, I'm falling in line because I said I would, and because that's the right thing to do." And now he's got to realize that was not the right thing to do. And standing aside is not noble necessarily.
Yeah. Some of this is being results oriented.
Right? Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. But it's the same thing that Ned ran into, that we run into with Ned's character and his conflict, is that being honorable is not always the best course. It's usually the right course. There are definitely times where you just have to sacrifice honor. And it came up for Ned in the Black Cells, and it may happen very similarly. What was Ned willing to do when Varys was like, well, you're just going to die? He's like, yeah, I'll just die. He's like, well, what about Sansa? And he's like, okay, I'll lie. I'll call myself a traitor, right? Yeah. What if that same thing could happen? Or something very similar with Sansa again. Like, what if Dany's like, no, Sansa needs to die, and Jon's like, okay, now I can't sit here.
Now I'll be a queen slayer.
Yeah, that would, like, if anything moves Jon, it won't be his own life. I think he values his honor more than his own life, but he does not value his own honor more than Sansa's life or Bran's or Arya's. It's very much like Ned in that regard. So that's really interesting. I think there's a huge, enormous potential for conflict there. It's already headed that direction, so I think that's an extremely likely way for the show to play out, at least in some way or another. Anything to add to that?
I mean, that's a lot, and I will probably continue. Those thoughts will continue to be themes through what we talk about here.
Right on.
One thought that I can see, another thing I can see happening that would just contribute to this even more is, What if Dany wants to burn Tyrion? Is Jon going to stand by and watch it happen again?
I think he would have to. I think he would have to allow that because of like legally speaking, Tyrion did break. He went against her. He let Jaime go. Like if it depends on how it's framed. If she's like, look, he did this. What's Jon going to do? Jon would be like, no, he broke the law. Like, how's he going to stand against that? He might hate it. He might argue against it, but ultimately, that's not the kind of thing he would rebel against because it's totally under the guise of law. Right. He might hate it, but
he might not rebel against it. But having to see it again, it's just eventually he's going to be no more. I can't take it anymore.
Yes, I agree. It could build. It could like wear down his resolve, or perhaps increase his resolve. Whatever.
Think how many people stood by while Mad King Aerys was burning people.
Jaime himself.
Not even justifiably. They still stood by and let it happen. But then eventually they turned on him,
Yeah, Jaime, Barristan, both just sat there and let it. That's an interesting part of the whole theme here is like good people sworn to obey terrible people, And Aerys is a terrible person. Dany is kind of yet to be seen how she proceeds from here. She's done a terrible deed. That doesn't mean she's going to be a terrible queen. We'll have to see. From Steven Rodriguez, I'll miss these live streams. What role will Bran play? Well, we still definitely wonder about that. I think that if Dany is removed, I do maintain Bran is a logical candidate to be king, as strange as it might sound to have a little boy who can't have kids, who has all of human history in his mind. He doesn't want anything. Like these conversations he had with Tyrion and the fact that he interfered with the succession, it's just still like, I just don't see, there's obviously it could be about love is the death of duty and stuff like that. That might be a little too subtle for the show, though. If we're looking for more straightforward answers, it's because he sees this as maybe he sees it as a duty. Maybe he sees it as well as the only way that the throne will be used with some sense of justice and ethics, because he's not corruptible like these other people are, or is he? That might be he may be, but like selling him as uncorruptible would work to some people, to a lot of people maybe.
This is another thing that's still perplexing me a little. In fact, I wanted to maybe do a thought experiment.
Yeah,
still not quite sure what Bran was trying to accomplish by telling Jon that he was the heir. Like I feel like it made it worse.
Yeah,
I feel like it made it worse.
I think so too. And that's why this theory has a lot of validity to it. Let alone the fact that he is now a favorite on that betting site Oddshark. A favorite,
really,
to be the king. He is like picking the field has lower odds than Bran.
Who is?
Bran.
Oh.
Yes.
Okay. That's
so
weird.
It is kind of weird. Yeah, like you could, if you bet $5 for Bran to be king, you will not win. You will not win $5 if he becomes king, because that's how much the odds are stacked in his favor on that site. So if you really don't think Bran will be king, you should have bet against it a long time ago, because the odds have only gotten worse and worse every week. Question from Ian Relaford. The end of show podcast doesn't mean the end of Sean's attendance on here, does it? No, it does not. Not only will we still having Saturday live streams once a month, which Sean will be frequently available for, but we will be doing some scripted content, and that will be the first time Sean will be able to join us on scripted content. He's only been on our live streams in the past. So a new role for Sean. Not only will it not be ending, but a new role will be dawning for him. Because we do have a lot of book to show content. Things we learn from the show that we want to express about what we think is coming in the books, what it tells us, especially things that well, not just especially, but also things that we think will be different and how they'll be different, but also how we think they'll be the same. That's really important. And as you get farther in the books, you'll have more to say about that. But there's a lot just to say about the early chapters. I will be rereading, and that's a huge thing. We'll be able to go over some of those things together, because rereading the series after getting new information about what the show has shown us, even if it's just bullet points about what George R. R. Martin told them, they all need to be refreshed. I need to go look through the whole series and see if there's any foreshadowing for any of these things we already saw.
So what you should do is when you get into a Clash of Kings and you get to where Sean is, you need to be like, okay, Sean, I read this chapter, and then Sean has to read that chapter and keep pace with you from that point.
I'll be done with the Clash of Kings too quick for that. I literally have like less than 100 pages left.
So. Well, then Storm of Swords it is.
You will take you.
I'll have that done in 3 months.
Yeah, exactly. Aziz will have reread all of A Song of Ice and Fire in that time. You need a step 2.
My reading time all got diverted to watching time. I'll have it done in 3 weeks, maybe 3 days.
So from Maura Lee, looking forward to the last episode tomorrow night and the GOT documentary coming out on the 26th. Love you and Ashea and the kitties. Cats rule. They sure do. They all appear to be sleeping around today. We don't see no cats to grab on our laps just yet, but maybe in an hour. Marley also says, looking forward to you singing Jenny's song. Well, thank you, Mara. I'm looking forward to recording it and sharing it with you all. It should be really fun. Andy Lykin says, keep up the good work, enjoying the content. Thank you very much, Andy. Jennifer Shanley Clark says, thank you for always showing both sides and staying positive. Looking forward to your panels at Con of Thrones. Well, thank you, Jennifer. Yes, we are looking forward to those as well.
Sometimes there's more than 2 sides. To be fair.
3 sides, 4 sides, 5 sides. It's a polygon. T. Gill says, loved you guys for years now. Thanks. Thank you, T. Gill. Chris Trombley, if Dany is to be killed, what about Drogon? Yeah, I mean, just as the Unsullied and the Dothraki are part of the removal of or killing, it has to be part of the plan. The Drogon's got to be part of the plan too. And maybe the hardest part to account for. Like, they just don't know. Like we talked about, if Dany dies and Drogon lives, he could just fly off to Valyria and head home, or he could go berserk. Well, I know which of those two is cheaper for them to film, but that's where Arya and the bow shot stuff could be coming up. Like bow, there's something we plan on talking about today. We may as well talk about it now. Chekhov's bow. With the reference, Chekhov's gun is an old movie reference that refers to like I don't know the original reference, but there's a gun that's used shown in the first act is going to pop up in the third act. It's a basic concept like that, and it's used. So that term is thrown around a lot to refer to any sort of MacGuffin, any sort of item or plot that's seemed important but hasn't yet happened. And so we are with 1 episode left, and in the very first episode of the entire show, Arya shoots the bow behind Bran and hits the bullseye, which by itself is just like, oh, that's nothing. Arya's good at shooting bows, big deal. But twice this season, she's been shooting a bow. And so it really seems like they're building this up for her to shoot a bow, and the obvious answer for her shooting a bow, if it's not to kill Daenerys, would be to kill Drogon, and shooting a dragon in the eye socket would be the way to accomplish that, because a regular bow, like, you're not going to kill Drogon like hitting him anywhere else, but in the eye socket that could do it. And well, do you think that'll happen?
I don't know, man. I don't think it will. I gotta say, in the same way that I thought the idea of Dany being killed is tough to see how that plays out, because I don't know what's going to happen to the Dothraki. I didn't even think about Drogon. Killed or not killed, I didn't think about Drogon. I guess if she's not killed.
Sean, last week you said, I don't see a way that Cersei is killed.
Yeah.
You said that.
I said I had a hard time envisioning it on screen, how it would happen. I had a hard time seeing her getting stabbed with blood or smashed in the face or something like that. And
which is why we theorized.
And I did predict that she wouldn't die. But she died, but it's still, we only sort of saw her die,
It wasn't ambiguous though.
Yeah, right. I'm not arguing in any way that she's still alive.
Right. Which is why, that is why we thought it would. That is how they kill characters like that. They don't kill characters like that bloodily. They do it like elegantly, falling or being crushed. This is like the two. Like the
Dany,
Emperor.
though, I can see dying bloodily. I can see a dagger thrust into her belly and blood coming out in her dress. I can see that for sure.
I disagree. I definitely don't think we'll get that.
I don't think we'll get it, but I can see it way more than I can see it for Cersei. That something like that was 1%. Dany, something like that's 20 or 30%.
Okay. Well, let's talk a little further about, actually, do we have any more early questions here? Yes, we do have a couple more questions here, and then we'll get to more specific predictions. For Mr. Mitchell 954, Great Council Deuce, Bran, Sansa, Yara, Robin Arryn, Prince of Dorne, Tyrion to choose one true king. That is definitely how Bran would get chosen. In these Bran theories, it's not because, he's next in line. It doesn't work that way, because Gendry would be next in line the way things have been set up. So Gendry as king would be, well, it's possible. And if they're doing a great council, he would be, an option because of who he is. But on the other hand, who he is a blacksmith's son. He doesn't have any rule. Like he said, I barely know how to use a fork. I don't even know that he would want it. He would be like, come on, guys. I don't know that I would be a good choice here. I have no ruling experience. I could see them bypassing him for that, and maybe he even doesn't want it. But again, this is how we get to Bran. because they choose someone who's doesn't have ambition, who doesn't have desire, who doesn't have not too much nepotism to worry about. Some people would probably bring that up because he's a Stark, but it's really tricky. And but I do like the idea of a Great Council because it's a historical event that's happened twice, and George likes to create these historical events in the past to foreshadow them coming in the future. And well, we only got one episode left if we're going to get a Great Council, which was a big deal in the past. Well, this is the only time we could get it, and you can see why we would get it. If they decide that Daenerys is not appropriate as the queen, then they'd have to pick someone else, and Jon definitely doesn't want it. So then, well, got to be someone. Got to be someone. Davos. Davos King.
He might be the best king of all the people, of all the candidates. He might be the actual best ruler.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, he would be a good one. Doesn't Ahmed Ali says, doesn't Bran live in the past, so how would he rule? Well, presumably he would be able to see the mistakes people made in the past. Or he might just not be a very good ruler. It's like, you could think he would be this enlightened king, but he might be kind of crappy. Maybe he's got some feelings and some ambitions after all.
It'd be hard to conspire against him.
It would be almost impossible to conspire against him, that's for sure. The regime would have some security in that sense.
He might be able to pick good advisors, and the advisors might have to be loyal to him because they just can't do anything against him. I still doubt it. I still don't. I would be like eating my words. I guess I'll be eating my words if Bran ends up on the Iron Throne.
Where are your words? Can we like your notes? You mean?
Yeah.
You can eat your crazy notes.
Okay, let's see. I'm waiting.
Jaehaerys Stargathister says, Jon refuses to kneel, so Dany tries to torch him. Thoughts? I feel like that's possible, but I feel like it'll be someone else that gets torched for refusing to kneel, not Jon, because Jon has already, he hasn't knelt, but he's already openly pledged and said, he gave his promise, and Jon really is it's really tough for Jon to break promises. What do you think? Do you think and also I don't, that is a good reason for Dany to torch him if he refuses to kneel. Other than that, I don't know why she would, because
he's already kneeled. I don't think it'll come up. Say, okay, Jon, kneel. He'll be standing beside her when she's telling other people to kneel. He's already kneeled.
He has already.
Does Grey Worm
pledged
have to
her.
kneel?
I mean, maybe she'll want it as as an authority thing to show like he shows it in front of the realm.
Yeah.
But I don't think he would refuse because he, like you said, he's already done it, and it would be a renewal of his fealty, and he would have to be breaking his. Yeah, I don't know. It's tricky.
I can also see him, kneeling, if you will, but maybe no longer serving her. Kind of like Ned was like, "I'm done here. Let me give you my pin back. I'm not hand anymore." He didn't tell Robert, "You're not my king anymore." He just said, "I'm not your hand anymore."
Yeah.
And Jon I'm going back to Winterfell.
Yeah.
Be queen. Winterfell will kneel to you. I'll convince Sansa, but I'm not serving you anymore.
I think she would want to keep him there because his claim is dangerous, and even if he doesn't want to push it, other people might. And so, and that would be, by the way, that might be a reason for her to want him removed entirely. That's pretty bloody and ruthless, but
she'll give him Dragonstone.
It could. Typically, the heir is given Dragonstone, but she doesn't have an heir, so that's also a tricky part of this. She doesn't have an heir. Is the most likely title of this final episode A Dream of Spring? This question is from Armando C. Hey, Armando, how you doing, buddy? And what do you think that will mean for the ending? Feels a little hopeful, no? A Dream of Spring is the provisional planned title for the last book of A Song of Ice and Fire. So it's a very good theory, but also there's the previous title of A Dream of Spring, George changed it, was A Time for Wolves. He thought that title maybe was a little too spoilery or gave too much away. So that's definitely possible. I lean towards Hour of the Wolf, which is the post Dance of the Dragons episode where where a Stark comes in and cleans up the things up.
It'll be something like The Broken Wheel.
The Broken Wheel. Well, then Bran definitely can't become king at the end of an episode called The Broken Wheel. He'd just be like, I can't. Dang it. So Megan Molo, super chat with no question. Thank you, Megan. Lady May of House Lawson, same. Thank you, Lady May. And Bernie L. Oh, is Sean drinking cat placenta and Mountain Dew? And Jimmy Padge wants to know, did I miss the description of Sean's concocted beverage? You did not. It does not have cat placenta or any sort of placenta in it, but we should bring it up. What are you drinking, Sean?
This is the berry naked drink mixed with a sparkling ice. strawberry watermelon,
It really needs to be stirred.
and Mountain Dew.
Yeah, look at all that at the
there's
bottom.
like
You have sediment down there. All right, let's move on to some theories, and then we'll come back to more questions. We're roughly halfway through today. Don't have any particular mid-roll shout-outs, so we're just going to keep on going. Yeah, Tyrion and Dany is a tricky part here because we wonder, there's obviously some Tywin Aerys vibes, but Tywin is a lot different than Tyrion, and Aerys is a lot different than Daenerys. But that said, there's similarities for sure. And the daughter of the Mad King and the son of his hand, that part, obviously, so many of these things just line up so well, you can't miss it. Now, I want to think back to an earlier, smaller incident that happened when Dany was trying to rule Meereen. She executed that fellow Massador who was totally in love with her, as a queen, and was just thought he was doing what she wanted. And it was a powerful scene because the crowd is like, don't do it, don't do it. A lot of them probably expected her to forgive this guy at the last second. And then when she didn't, it started a riot.
Yeah.
It was a big deal. And I think about that scene here because it shows how she was a little off. Like, not like mentally ill. I mean, she misread things. She did not expect that reaction. She thought they would appreciate the justice of it. And, well, they did not. And so I wonder how that's going to play out here. Is she going to... She thinks she's bringing the people justice and removing tyrants, but that's not how they're going to see it, is it?
I think they will, by the way.
Some
so
will. Some will or some won't. The people of King's Landing?
I think most will. I
really?
think most
Okay.
people. In fact, here we are. First, or a prediction I have. Maybe not my first big prediction so far, but a big thought that I have predicting where things are going. The people are going to support her. There'll be a few people close to her, Tyrion, Jon, whoever, who are suspicious or concerned, but her armies are clearly going to support her.
Yeah,
you see the Dothraki cheering. They're all going to think
that's
this is a victory.
There's never been any doubt for them.
And maybe a large population of King's Landings that's left over maybe aren't enthusiastically supporting her, but they're scared. They're not going to go against her. But I think the people of the North, maybe not Sansa, but the populace, the soldiers of the North, they're going to support her. They're there.
But what if they find out about Jon?
Well, that might change things. That might change.
And that's
things.
already that's a big question.
A big thing whether or not
Whether
Varys or how many letters he got out or whatever. But I think that the people of Dorne, burn King's Landing down. They want to revenge against the Lannisters too.
Yeah, that's
right?
true. Yes. Yeah, I can buy that. Yeah, I can buy Dorne being cool with it. Iron Islands won't care. They're not be like,
Iron Islands are
what
like
an
not part of it
atrocity.
anyway.
Yeah.
Right? So I can see the general population, they just know Dany won in King's Landing. She's the new queen. She's got her dragon.
But won't King's Landing
armies
be
are
mad at her
victorious.
for all the slaughter?
Yeah, but they might
They won't be able to do anything about it, probably.
Right, and I don't even know if she's going to rule from King's Landing. She might rule from Dragonstone and build a new capital. Who knows?
I guess it's possible. I think she made a big deal out of continuing where, the throne and where it was, and like that's the spot where you get to claim.
Yeah.
You're right.
But if she
There's a
stays in
chance.
King's Landing, even if the people of there King's Landing are hesitant about supporting her, Dothraki and Unsullied are right there. What are they going to do?
Yeah, there's nothing they can do. Not right away.
The dragon's there. Like, they just have to follow her, however much they want to support her or not. And I think most of the population around the kingdom will, if not actively, enthusiastically support her, will at least passively not care.
You're right.
I think she's going to be this victorious queen.
That's a good point. I don't fully agree with what you're saying, but I agree with a lot of it. For example, a very common theme is the common people do not care who plays the game, what happens in the Game of Thrones as long as they're left alone.
Yeah.
And that is going to be true. You're right. That's going to be true for people all over the realm. For the most part, they do not care. They're like, okay, a new queen. Well, hopefully she's decent to us. Hopefully there might be some consternation, some anxiety, because a new regime always means potential changes. But most of them, you're right. They just won't care.
It adds to my belief that she's going to live and be on a throne depressed and maybe not technically clinically depressed, but maybe. And also that Jon's not going to kill her, because I think, let's just imagine a scenario where Jon's like, you've gone too far, and he stabs her in the back, and then all the Unsullied and Dothraki are around him like, you just killed our queen.
Yeah,
you're going down.
He would be willing to die for that, I assume.
Yeah. Would all of a sudden the people of Dorne are like, okay, now we support Jon, or you know what I mean? Like, the people of the realm are just going to jump around and support. I think that. At least not in one episode. They're not in one episode going to show everyone switch fealty from Dany to Jon. So
that's a good point. Yeah. So yeah, and you're talking more about Jon and Dany and Sansa. This all wraps up together a lot. I think Tyrion is maybe a little separate from it all because if Tyrion is executed, like I said before, I don't think Jon. It might push him in one direction, but it won't be the tipping point probably because I don't think they're that close, and because there's probably some justice to it if hasn't been that good of a hand. I do think he would be a much better peacetime hand than wartime hand. Like
Jon?
No, Tyrion.
Tyrion. Oh yeah.
He hasn't.
Yeah.
I mean, for one thing, he hasn't been a very good wartime hand, so you can't be a lot. It's not saying a lot, but he was. I think that's more where his skills lie. Anyway, he's more about like thinking, and he's good with administration. Well, anyway, that's neither here nor there.
He's better at anticipating political moves than military moves.
And we're not going to see that play out anyway in one episode. We're not going to see his political skills play out over a long period of time if he even has a chance to use them. But yeah, so wrapping Sansa into this, I think is we've touched on it a bit and how that might be something that moves Jon if she's threatened. But let's talk about like how so many of these are parallels. You talked on Twitter. You made a great point on Twitter about how so much of this, not all of it, some of it doesn't line up quite right, but a lot of it lines up really well with stuff that's happening both at the end of Robert's Rebellion itself and then fast forward 15 years later to the beginning of a Game of Thrones with Robert coming north to Ned. There's some between those two scenarios, there's a lot in common with what we're seeing develop right now. So lead us into that. I thought it was a really good line of thinking.
Yeah, some of these are maybe just some potential thoughts or potential parallels, but we have, like a couple different angles to take on it. We had the Ares at the time had a Lannister hand who abandoned him. So now we have a Lannister hand who maybe doesn't abandon Dany, maybe he does, but maybe he's just killed by her.
Yeah.
Tywin might have been killed by Ares if he hadn't left him,
Yeah.
Then we have I don't know how likely this is, but we had a Lannister betray the monarch. We had Jaime be the Kingslayer, maybe Lannister, maybe Tyrion somehow kills Dany. If Varys is trying to poison her, then maybe
the Starks are all, except for Tyrion, the Starks are mostly in the positions the Lannisters were in, but there's some crossover, and except in this case, they're kind of allied.
And you had
which is true at the end of Robert's Rebellion, too. The Starks and Lannisters were not allied, but they were both on Robert's side at the end.
Yep. You have both Ares and then Robert, both calling Starks to King's Landing. To on some level, maybe to answer.
One was for Brandon and
or
and
for
Rickard,
support,
and one was to be hand. Yeah.
Right. So you can imagine maybe Dany calls Sansa to court to kneel, demands that Jon stay in support.
And that's what I was sort of bringing up with that Hour of the Wolf business at the end of the Dance of the Dragons. It's a northerner who comes down, a strong-willed northerner comes down and cleans up court. And that sounds more like Sansa than Jon because it's coming down from the north to clean up, whereas Jon is already here and already tied in with everything. But, these things don't have to be strict one-to-one relationships.
This is more of a stretch, but we have a Baratheon end up as the king.
Yeah,
maybe could have Baratheon could end up king here. It's a possibility. By the way, just another side note. If Sansa does get called down, Bran's coming with her.
Ooh, yes.
And that'll be a force. It'll be hard for someone to just execute Sansa. Bran's not just going to let that happen.
They'd have to kill her too. You're right. Yeah. She would not just lay down for that.
And also, it's a neat thought that we see in the shadows of Dany Drogon, in the shadows of Cersei the Mountain, in the shadows of Sansa Brienne.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. Good thoughts. And again, the one character who we've talked about all these characters, and one character is really hard to see how he fits into all this is Davos. We brought him up, but it's like, how does he fit into any of this? Right now, he's technically Gendry's subject. He's from the Stormlands, so he could go be Gendry's hand. Not that Lords of the Storm, not that they typically appoint a hand, but just his key advisor or something like that. They have a relationship already. That could be part of the little ending montage.
The thing Davos really needs to do is go back to his wife and kids.
Seriously. Does he have kids? I don't think he has another kid.
Yeah, he does in the show.
In the show, he does? He has another kid? He definitely has a bunch in the show, or in the books. He has 7.
But he's never like, left. I lost my one and only son, or anything.
I thought he did say that.
I think he had said he lost his son, but I can't remember if he said one and only. I I wish I could remember better, but I think that he said something to that effect, but it was ambiguous
enough. It says
enough.
on the Game of Thrones wiki that he has several sons, including
good.
Mathos.
Okay, cool.
So I don't know.
Good. That's good. I'm glad he has more kids. I'm glad he didn't lose his only kid. That's rough. So yeah, hopefully there's a happy ending for Davos. I think he's the one of the most likely at this point because he's not implicated in any treason. He's not like some great warrior, you know.
There was a moment early in the season. In fact, I'm even thinking about the comment that the super chat someone had a minute ago, thinking about other little moments that happened earlier that maybe were like, oh, wait a minute, maybe that meant something.
Yeah.
I think it was at the feast, and Davos and Tyrion were kind of bantering back and forth. And I wish I could remember the context or the quote a little bit better, but basically it seemed like Davos's mind was spinning on how things were playing out. And he said something about, I'm not worried about X, I'm worried about Y. And Tyrion said, oh, well, think about this. And then it kind of like looked around at everyone, and Davos was like, well, now I feel a lot better.
Oh, yeah. He said, we've beaten them. Now we have to worry about us.
Us, yeah. Right.
Like, I think I will have that drink.
Yeah.
That was a great line.
And I wonder how much Davos has been this whole time thinking about us,
Yeah. And seeing it play out like, here we are. Here's us just ruining everything again. But it's also be like, what can he do about it? He's kind of like, got all the right ideas and thoughts, but not a lot of agency necessarily. Maybe he can just give good advice to Jon or Tyrion. That's one thing, is he can talk to these guys. Jon's always relied on him for advice.
Was he there when they burned Varys?
I think so.
Was he in that scene?
I think so. He would. He would think he would be. I mean, Jon was definitely there. I don't know where else Davos would be because they were together. I'm not sure though. Anyway, let's move on. Let's see here. Another few little things to wrap up that probably won't matter, but they deserve mention just in case they enter, like that Prince of Dorne, Edmure Tully, the Iron Bank. Maybe, it's kind of these things like they probably are just going to hand wave that away, but these are all small possibilities for someone to weigh in or to play a small role, or at least to get a line of dialogue. Yeah. And King's Landing itself, will they have time? Are they going to start discussing? Like you said, she probably won't move the capital, but if a discussion of rebuilding King's Landing comes up, that'll be, that might happen in some way or another. Another major one is Bran. Like, what's going on with Bran? We still have to wonder what his deal is. Is he going to be able to collect that reward? Tyrion being in not such great standing with Daenerys is not exactly going to help him fulfill that promise. I don't know if Dany's going to be too happy with that guy gets Highgarden. That's not what I had in mind. So, I don't know. I'm thinking Bran does not get Highgarden, but I'm not super confident. There's always a chance.
I don't think I'll be able to get my thought out without Shea
Bran Garden
cutting me off. You ready?
She's lurking.
I will say that Bran is that it seems such like a minor, almost petty factor, right? Given everything that's happened, everything we just saw, that the epicness and the destruction and what's at stake.
It's this weird little extra plot line.
That this one mercenary wants some reward for his thread on some, character that might die anyway. Like, I guess, but they showed us that. They made a point. They created that storyline. I feel like it's got to have some meaning. I'm very suspicious of how important it's going to be. I don't think they are just going to hand wave that away. I don't know how it will be.
Yeah, there's no way Bran just doesn't appear at all.
What I kind of hope and expect is Bran gets Highgarden. There's nothing to say to stop it.
Never gonna happen. Never, ever, ever. No, he's going to show up, be like, hey, I'm here for Highgarden. And Dany's going to be like, who the fuck are you? And she's just going to roast him.
Are you the guy that shot my dragon in the loot train battle? He's like, no, that wasn't me. That was my brother.
That was Gron.
Gron. Jerome. Cooper or Darnell, whichever one he was. I never remember if he was Cooper or Darnell.
It was Cruntist.
Maybe that's why he went into it. His name is Fellsword. Maybe that's why he became a sellsword. So someone else mentioned something about Bran that's relevant to his characterization. That he is, because he's in the wheelchair, he reminds people, and because his wheelchair came from Dorne, people think of Doran Martell, who was more concerned with peace than revenge. He cared about revenge. He wanted to get Tywin, but peace was more important to him.
There's one thought that has like sold me a little on the idea that there are some parallels to Doran, and I feel like I haven't got there in the books, but I'm confident the books have way more Dorne material and do way better with it, and that he is probably more of a protagonist character.
Correct. Yes.
And even in the show, he seemed to be presented as a protagonist.
Yeah.
But he got like 4 lines of dialogue.
He's definitely a
so.
good man. Like you can he has some tragedy to him. He's flawed like everyone. He can make mistakes. But he has loves and hates and desires and feelings, and he suffers a lot. He's in a lot of pain. He's got gout.
Yeah. And so a lot of that maybe could be compared to Bran, and which means that maybe Bran would also be a good leader, even if not sitting on an Iron Throne. Here's the thing:
a good guy to have on your small council, at least.
Yes. My instinct was to say that like he could have the North. Like, no, he said he can't have the North. Well, it seems like if he can't have the North, he can't have the whole kingdom either. So. I don't know.
If it's an election, then they can't elect him. But you're right. I mean, he wouldn't get it through bloodlines. That's definitely not going to happen. But
I think in the same way that Jon is like, I don't want it, Bran will be like, I don't want it. Like, this isn't going to happen,
Yeah. He might not want it, but that doesn't mean he won't get it. They would force him, you're going to take it. What are you going to do, kid? You're only 13. You got to take this. A question from Kilesh Jairamdas. Hey, Sean, Aziz and Sean, my girlfriend wants to pick up a new series to read, so could you each do a 2-sentence pitch on why A Song of Ice and Fire would be a great candidate? Thanks for everything you do for the community. Well, if she enjoyed Game of Thrones and if she likes reading, I cannot think of a better series, given all the fun there is to have here with all the, everything we do and all the things to talk about. It's endless. There's just so much to love about it. That was more than 2 sentences. I really need to think about that more. If I really have to compress it into 2 sentences, I should think about that more and be ready for the next time that question comes up.
Okay,
That's
I'll
hard.
I'll go then. I would say there is so much more depth to the story and so many more characters than you have any idea. That's 1 sentence. Second sentence. The writing is beautiful, poetic, just moving prose. That's enough, I think, to sell you on it compared to a TV show.
And Sean.
Yeah, I don't even know if they're necessarily asking us to compare it to the TV show. Like, is your girlfriend watching the show and also is looking for a new book series to read?
Okay.
Or do they just
good
want a book
question.
series to read?
Oh, good point.
But, not to take away from anything you said, but I think the thing, let me think, my 2 sentences are, it's rich. It's rich with symbolism and depth and character development. Sentence 1. Sentence 2, it's one of the most important things happening culturally in generations. I think if right now we look back and talk about Shakespeare, 100 years from now, people are going to look back and talk about Game of Thrones.
Yeah, that's not unlikely to be true. That's a good point. Like it's gotten so big and it's affected so many people. It'll probably parents are passing it down to their kids.
Yeah, even if you don't watch or like Star Wars or whatever, you still know who Darth Vader is. It's part of culture. You don't want to miss out on it. If you don't read comic books or care about these action movies, you still know who Superman is. And if you don't, you're missing out on a part of culture. You're going to have a harder time relating to the people in your society.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, right on.
That was also more than 2 sentences.
Dang. Yeah, you're right. Okay, so we have 2 different main History of Westeros only online communities. They are Flick and Facebook. Our Facebook group is very well moderated by some very generous Facebook mods who have to deal with a lot of, being moderators of a lot of different people, which sometimes people kind of can get a little testy with each other, and that's when the mods have to step in. And, sometimes there's the occasional troll who comes in and posts something or says something that's really not appropriate for a group. And so I have to give them a lot of thanks for dealing with a lot of that. And on the other hand, we have Flick, which is a new thing, and we are developing both these communities as a place for y'all to discuss the show and books with us and with each other. And so I took a few comments from Flick and Facebook to see what y'all were thinking about this final episode. A lot of people agree with Davos being someone that has a great shot at living based on how things look right now. Obviously, that could change. And a lot of people are pointing out that he's Gendry's subject. That's part of why I brought that up earlier. Kim Abridged here has a perhaps the most fairy tale ending possible. She says Doran marries Yara, the Iron Islands and Doran marry, and they form a new progressive southern kingdom where the only capital crime is making zombies. Sam invents library cards. Gilly keeps finding important things in old scrolls. Dany flies west of Westeros on Drogon and finds a village menaced by 1,000,000 goats. No one is burned ever again, and they eat lots of goat meat. Sansa becomes Queen Elizabeth of the North. Arya defeats the Doom, the Shadow of Ashai, and the Wyverns of Sithorios, becoming a hero of legend spoken of for 1,000 years by, especially by young children. The Dothraki return home to the Great Grass Sea, but only after Bran teaches them all how to skin change horses. Tyrion goes to Essos and realizes Daario is a doppelganger. He goes on a quest to expose him and receives a dwarf dragon as a reward when he and the original Daario are back in play, and they complete the end of the slave trade while passing the Tywin Lannister Legacy Acts, which offer legal protection for both sex workers and dwarfs. The Unsullied and the R'hllor worshippers invent the Red Cross. Jon finds Ghost, who finds a lady wolf and becomes devoted to direwolf protectionism, making a sanctuary. Bronn gets Highgarden, and this is the third big twist. He's descended from the Gardener Kings after all. He's actually got the Gardener blood. He takes the castle because literally no one is there, ushering in a new era of incredible growth of crops and trees.
That's Bran's role, to let us know Bronn's true heritage.
And all these incredible growth of crops and trees is used to rebuild the realm. He gets his choice of wife and wine and dies happy and old. Bran sits on the God's Eye and answers any question put to him by passing pilgrims. The end. Okay, so some people have a rosier prediction for the end here. On the other hand, Varun Sudhakar, I like this idea, is that I really don't think they'll do it because it removes the conflict from these characters, and they're all about creating conflict, is that Martha, the little girl that Varys was trying to get to poison Dany, that she still does it. That she still kills him, or her. That she's still trying to do her thing. You know, Varys left those rings as payment for her.
Oh, that's good.
It's a cool idea. I definitely don't think for plotting reasons they won't do it, but there's nothing like plot reason why that couldn't happen. You know, I just don't think they will because of the conflict stuff and giving that to Jon or Arya or making someone else do it, not having her just neatly removed by a character that we don't even know hardly. But I like it as a, you know, in the world, if it was a book, that might be a thing, that like a ball that's still rolling, that if Varys is killed, some of his plots are still in play. So the idea is really cool. Any thoughts on that?
I think it's an interesting thought. I again feel like they haven't set that up enough in the show, but something like that could happen in a book. So.
Yeah, right. It's kind of neat. Predictions from our Facebook group, on the other hand, from Lady Ardras, Arya sails west. And Andy C. and Megan N. bring up that in season 6, she does say she would one day like to sail west. Kind of like Alyssa Farman in the Fire and Blood, the Sun Chaser episode. Now, Arya hasn't shown a lot of like seafaring skill, but that doesn't mean that they can't, find a way for her to catch passage, or, they can do something with that.
She hasn't shown an ability to become a master of any skill.
Yeah, she's certainly the most, skilled character at things in the series. It's like if this was it's the Game of Thrones, right? If Dany is maybe the most powerful piece on the board, but Arya is the piece that's most capable of removing her. It's like in Stratego, where one can't be killed by anything except the spy.
The spy can't kill anything else.
Yeah, that would be the rub, because Arya can kill plenty of other things.
Yeah,
but yeah, it's kind of neat. Kevin Kev says Tyrion gonna be a burnt McNugget. I can't say that's not impossible. We certainly talked about that, so at least one person backs it up. Several people liked that comment, I think, if I remember right. So a lot of people, maybe not liking it as in they will enjoy seeing it, but they agree with the prediction as valid. Lots of people think that the kingdoms are going to split up in the end, that they'll all go independent, the Iron Throne won't be a thing.
I 100% agree with that.
Shea really likes that theory. Edward W. calls it their version of Brexit.
I tend to think that also. And another thing that I've seen brought up a lot that I kind of can't believe I didn't make my own connection sooner, but Martin is a Tolkien fan.
Yeah.
One ring to rule them all. The Iron Throne is kind of like the ring. And in the end, all the rings weren't united. You know what I mean? It wasn't like all the kingdoms were united under one ring. So
that's true. That's a good point. Yeah, we could definitely see that. A lot of people in both Flick and Facebook think Jon will come into contact with Dany just like we do, but hardly anyone thinks he's going to sit the throne. The idea that Jon will sit the throne is really just been torpedoed, partly because of his own refusal, his own characterization, and just a variety of other reasons.
Probably because of the time left to do that.
That's so earlier in the year, last year, a lot of people were like, yeah, Jon could end up on the throne. from the tenor of the comments in our Facebook and Flick groups, and as well as on Twitter, hardly anyone seems to.
So that means they're almost definitely going to do
it. Shock value. So that's interesting. All right, let's take some more questions from outside, from patrons and super chatters and such. From Lord Commander George the Golden. I keep thinking about the point from Book to Show review. He thinks it was made by Lady Gwyn. I think maybe it was made by Lady Gwyn. That Daenerys has become like Viserys, isolated on a foreign continent. I'm done making predictions since I've been wrong about almost everything, but it would be fitting symmetry if Daenerys is killed with Jon, her last known living relative, there to witness it. Not Jon dies also, but with Jon, would become the last Targaryen.
Weird how you put the emphasis on that.
Emphasis on that syllable, yeah. So that would be kind of like Daenerys witnessing Viserys killed and becoming the last Targaryen herself. Of course, that turned out to not be true since Jon was alive. But still, that's it could be a similar kind of parallel moment. The difference would be that Daenerys was kind of like had hardened her heart to Viserys' death because he was so awful. I don't think Jon would feel anything but awful about this, which is not a giant difference to the symmetry of the moments. It's feeling different about it isn't necessarily doesn't undermine this as a theory, certainly. So yeah, I could see something like that happening, and it is a good thing to point out.
I feel like there's almost no way for any character to not feel awful about this, no matter how it pans out. You know what I mean? Like I suppose at the end of the World War II, people were happy the war was over, but it was still awful. So many people died on all sides. It was such a terrible thing for the whole world. It's other than being happy that it's over, whoever's king or president or whatever is still awful. It's all awful.
Yeah, I agree. From Richard Seymour, can Dany be redeemed? Can it happen in an hour and 20, even with bad writing? Bad writing allows a lot of skipping over a lot of things.
Yeah. I still wonder if there'll be some sort of time jump, even if it's just like a 2-month time jump. I wonder. I thought that they might do a 2-year time jump. When a season started, I'd give it that potential, but as it's been going, like, no, it doesn't.
Yeah. No.
Other than, again, maybe here a 2-month time jump.
Yeah. I think it could happen, but I don't think it will. I
still think it's less than 10%.
Yeah, I think they want to delve into this conflict and not have it resolve itself in a happy. That would almost be a happy. If Dany can be redeemed, then that's kind of a happy ending. And we're not supposed to get a happy ending from what we're told.
It gives some sweetness to the bittersweet. Like I was saying, it would still be bitter. Even if Dany is redeemed, Missandei is still dead,
That's true. She still has no one to be happy with, and she's got no friends, basically, and all. Yeah, that's true. And there's still all the destruction and death and everything. Stannis Baratheon asks, would Season 8 make sense if we had young Griff? Well, I don't know if it would make sense, but it would make some of the other plots make more sense. Some of the folding up of characters and compressing of plot lines and giving arcs, mixing arcs up would definitely fit better. Varys is a character that kind of got messed up by that, because Varys was never supposed to be a traitor to Dany in the books. He was supposed to be using her and for his own agenda to set up his preferred candidate, where Dany was more like a smokescreen that developed differently than they expected, because they didn't, they didn't foresee the hatching dragons part coming, so they changed their plan when that happened. But they were never backing her to be the primary candidate, and
I feel like in the show and in the books and in the show, it seemed to me like they were trying to be ambiguous with Varys. Even if he was good and righteous, it was kind of questionable. Until right at the end here, he's the clear good guy.
Yeah, which doesn't make sense, because he's done too many things that are not good guy things. He doesn't deserve this reputation of only caring about the small folk. Like, he engineered a Dothraki invasion, or tried to, of the whole country to destabilize it, so that their candidate could come in and be the good guy. Like, that's sacrificing a lot of small folk for your goal. And now all of a sudden he's like, we don't kill innocents. Like, yeah, you do. And you could argue that he's learned since then. He's grown out of that, but they didn't show that. They didn't portray that. So you can't really.
And I'm guessing in the books, he's just going to be more gray.
He's always just been dark. Like the little birds in the books are child slaves with their tongues cut out. Yeah. There's no getting around that as a horrible thing, right? Like, you can't be like, oh, well, he's got a good reason to cut child's tongues out. Nah, there's no good reason for that. It's at least that's tough to swallow. The tongue,
especially if you don't have a tongue.
From Jaehaerys Stargathister again. Bronn and Arya versus Drogon. Bronn versus Drogon. I don't think Bronn's fighting Drogon. He's stepped back from the whole fighting thing, and I think he intends to stay that way. But Yeah, it's possible. There's always
Well, he's
a
not going
way.
to fight Drogon. He's going to kill Drogon.
Oh yeah, Arya shoots one eye, Bronn shoots the other. Take
On
out
three.
both eyes at the same. On 3, yeah, 1, 2, 3. I think Arya versus Drogon. If anyone kills Drogon, I think Arya is the one. The bow shot to me is more about hitting him in the eye than it is killing Daenerys. I think that's Jon's conflict to deal with. Daenerys, for better or worse, that's how it's been set up. That doesn't mean I want it to be this way or agree with it. That's just what I feel like they're heading towards. From Blue Duck Umber, will Jon get?
Sorry, real quick.
Yeah.
Dany did agree to lock the dragons up at one point.
Yeah,
I don't know if she would do that again.
it didn't go very
And
well.
the Targaryens in the past also confined the dragons to
the
the
dragon
pit.
pit,
It also
which
didn't go very well.
Didn't go very well. That's true. I don't know. Yeah, well, that's a piece of logistics they may or may not deal with, along with maybe rebuilding city and.
Arya sent Nymeria away. Maybe Dany will send Drogon away.
Yeah, I doubt it.
Me too.
She
but
needs that
just
power.
something to think about.
But yeah, this is something. Dealing with Drogon is definitely going to be a thing.
I hadn't thought about how things with Drogon will pan out very much. So
Blue Duck Umber asks, will Jon get a crown for a king like Viserys, as in, burning him to death or melting gold on his head? I don't think so, because like we said, Jon hasn't truly committed treason or anything like that. Now, Dany can always just just call for his head just because she decides to. But right now, I don't think so. Right now,
I'll say she did that.
What do you mean?
Called for his head.
Oh yo, and he said no, babe. It's like, I do not want any of my auntie. She's like, come on, nephew.
he's conflicted. Jon's torn. He does and he doesn't.
Sylvia Sabrex asks, what is the role of the Citadel to be, if any? I'm guessing none. I don't think they're going to appear or be addressed at all, but I do think that they will be addressed in the book. And if they do some sort of Great Council sort of situation in the books, the Citadel will absolutely be involved to bring up questions of precedent and to make, into all that sort of business. The Citadel will, caveat is if there is still a Citadel, because there's a very good chance the Citadel is just burned up or destroyed or devastated by Euron. So, in that case, the role of the Citadel will be zilch. Or perhaps a few surviving maesters will be around. There's always that. There'll be maesters that survive even if the Citadel's taken out, because there's a maester in every castle. So, it won't be that easy to wipe out the maesters. Chris Trombley, fun thought. Should Dany live, take the throne, and rule, who would you give council seats to from the remaining characters alive? Yeah, right? Like, that is tough.
Yeah, for me, obviously, you got to put Sam, Davos, Sansa, Tyrion, but whether they would accept, I guess they feel like they have to.
Yeah.
But Dany wouldn't offer it. It's a moot point to me, so I didn't go too far in listing people just because there's very few named characters left, and I really don't think Dany's going to rule and have a council, and if she did, I don't think we'll see her filling out a council.
Yeah. That's a good point. I don't know if it's interesting. The whole Sansa question is interesting because that's one of those ones where, does she want to keep Sansa close where she can keep an eye on her, where she can, or is bringing her close make it more dangerous, but she doesn't fully trust Sansa. They don't fully get along. So one way or another, Dany would want to deal with that.
One of the most intriguing things to me about the show, one reason I would recommend someone read the book, is I like thinking about all these different characters and all these different roles. There's the council, but there's also the lords of these different lands. And there just aren't enough characters to cover them all. You can't, if you want someone to be in the north, and someone to be the hand, and someone to be the master coin, and someone to be in the reach, and someone to be there just aren't enough characters, and some of them aren't really candidates for any of this in the first place. And so that is a frustration to me. I wish we had more named characters and a couple more episodes to let all this pan out. I kind of agree with Shay. I just don't think we're going to see a council get named. If we do, it'll be like one person,
Yeah, I kind of agree with that at the time. But if she were to name a council, I would definitely, if I were her, I would definitely name Davos. I would name Sam probably, although she's maybe a little distrusting of Sam.
Yeah.
Maybe not Sam. Sam's maybe also just better off on his own.
Yeah, he maybe isn't too shy about giving orders and stuff like that.
And maybe after a few decades, he continues, his learning and I don't know.
Because he doesn't want to be a maester. He can't be a maester. He's got a wife now.
So he's not he'll be the Grand Maester.
Yeah.
Unless they change those rules.
Yeah. Davos is a great idea. Tyrion's a good idea. She could bring Gendry in just to keep him close, and I don't know. There's just not enough named characters for these roles. That's part of the problem. Is you just have to invent. There would be invented new characters. Like, yeah, this new Prince of Dorne would be a good candidate. He's,
I guess like Yara's her own kingdom, so she wouldn't be on a council as mistress of ships.
Yeah.
I guess, or would she? I don't know.
She still could be though. Like she could still
I
have
don't
someone else as like a overture piece between these two kingdoms maybe.
Yeah. Maybe.
Another option is having what's his name guy from shoot, now I'm forgetting completely. lost the thought. I'll come back to it.
It's hard to imagine like the governor of North Carolina also being the Secretary of State. You can't.
Yeah.
You already couldn't have both those roles.
I mean, that does happen.
I mean, the
a
show
lot.
could do it.
They do that a lot in real life.
But
You have people that have these like huge titles that also are like CEO of some giant company. And
I
they're also
suppose, yeah.
honorary. Like that happens.
Yeah.
It's kind of shady, but it does happen. A lot of times it's because they designate someone else to do all these other jobs. Like
they have the title
yeah,
in theory, but day to day they're not actively doing it.
yeah.
But it doesn't seem like Yara is that kind of character, Right.
No, I agree. So let's see. From LML 666, praise Valor for your beards, you sexy beasts. Thank you for that. Yes, beards. Yes, little beard rubs
I
appropriate.
could get 666 dyed in to my beard somehow.
From Lord Commander George the Golden, I think the worst writing decision wasn't any major plot point, but to force everything into only 6 episodes. Yeah, that created the need to rush so much. That necessitated a lot of cutting and a lot of rushing. It wasn't a foregone conclusion that so much would be rushed until that point. And to be fair, season 6 or season 7 is as long as, or season 8 is as long as season 7 in terms of minutes. Just fewer episodes. But
season 7 was short too.
But season 7 was shorter than a normal season. So yes, that is like it's at least 2 hours shorter. And that's a lot.
They didn't just now start rushing things.
No, you're right. They didn't just now start rushing things. They started rushing things a while ago. But the pace of rushing seems to have picked up the most here at the end, in my opinion. And maybe rewatching it, I would feel differently. From Thomas Pappas, here we go. There's the food question come back. Looks like Ashea has typed her answer out. She's ready.
Yeah, I am
So
ready.
last meal before execution.
I would go with some sort of Mexican food with some sort of grilled pineapple, and I would have to go with a dessert because I love dessert. And right now I'm going to go with this tasty fried cheesecake dessert I get at this place called Raging Burrito here in Atlanta. And it is just cheesecake fried with like this crusty exterior.
Is it like deep fried?
Not like deep fried, like lightly fried. And then it has like this chocolate drizzle. It's the most delicious dessert you'll ever have.
Well, I want it deep fried. I have a new dream. My God, I never thought about fried cheesecake. Ugh.
Y'all, so a reminder to y'all listeners out there that we're in the South. So that's why, partly why my y'all is drawn out here, but that is why we do deep fry everything. And often it's the correct decision. Sometimes it's not. But it's always worth a try. Because if it's good after deep frying, well, then you can just keep doing that.
Yeah.
You got to find out. You got to know if it's worth deep frying. All right, so Sean, what do you think?
I like variety. That's the thing. My last meal would be like 8 different things.
Mixed into a bucket.
Sushi and French fries and pizza and eggs with avocados and also fried cheesecake, deep fried cheesecake. That's my addition now.
Yeah, definitely all mixed together in a bucket or a sack. You just reach in and just grab handfuls of that food. For me, let's see. I would want some Italian food, and I would want a fish taco, and I would want a bowl of Rice Krispies and some brownies and some mint chocolate chip ice cream and a giant mug of coffee. And
should we be thinking about our last meal or our favorite foods? Is there a difference?
There may not be a difference.
Yeah.
For some people, you just want your favorite foods. Some people want something.
Some people, for example, in our chat were like something really spicy because fuck whoever was,
stink up the executioner's room.
Whatever. Like, so that's like maybe not their favorite food, but that's what their last meal will be.
My last meal would be an immortality potion.
Someone did say something like that. They said a time travel pill.
I was going to say the reason I would want a lot of alcohol would be so I'm still imagining that this would be death by burning. because that was sort of the context here. So drink a lot of alcohol so that I would explode, so the alcohol would ignite. I would really go out in a blaze of glory. But I don't think I'm enough of a drinker to get enough alcohol in me before I would just pass out. But it would be worth a try.
What are you worried about? Drinking yourself to death?
Good point. Okay, so Jaehaerys has sent a super chat with the correct pronunciation of his name. Thanks. Shay is the best. It's pronounced Stargathister. Stargathister. That's cool. Stargathister. Stargathister.
Where's the emphasis?
Stargathister. That's pretty cool. It's
on the wrong syllable.
Yeah, it is on the wrong syllable. Hey, and here's another happy Saturday from Tallahassee chat. Thank you very much.
From Paul Atreides.
From Paul Atreides. Cool. Well, if y'all missed it last time, I lived in Tallahassee for 9 years. I went to college and high school there. My mother and granddad lived there, so it is basically my family's home. So I definitely love shout-outs from Tallahassee. There's another last question here. It's from Philip Wolf. It says, what has been your all-time favorite moment from the series so far, and what would you like to see most before it all ends? Thanks for the stream.
For me, I honestly think it is from this season. I really think Jenny's song paired with everyone the night before the battle is really high up there for me. It's a big culminating moment. I have to look at it with a few more years, recency bias and all that, but I was so taken out of left field there as well. Like, I did not expect to get Jenny's song, period, let alone there, and I was just sobbing. It was just a really emotional moment for me in realizing I was like coming to terms with the fact that the series was ending. It might be that. As for what I most want to see, I would most want another flashback. I don't really think we're going to get another flashback, but I would most want that. My second choice would just be, some sort of montage that checks in on the characters, but specifically Sam and Gilly. I just want to see them happy and whole.
Right on. Good answer. What do you think, Sean?
It's really hard to pick a favorite moment. For the moment, I'll try to throw two out. One is Tywin lording over Joffrey, and that when he walks up, when Joffrey's like, "How come I'm not in the council meetings?" and Tywin walking up the steps and looking down at him,
he's just like,
"We could have you carried."
He's like, "The king is tired."
And also the way that was paired, that the idea of like Tywin just walking into court, walking right up, was paired with that scene of Dany, of that Lord from Yonkai coming to meet with Dany, and he had to walk through just all those guards along. He was kind of threatened the whole way walking into the lion's den, when Tywin just confidently walks right up to Joffrey and looks down on him. It's such a disparity on the nature of where power lied,
That's good.
And my other one would be when Ned got his head chopped off. That was when I realized this show is not like other shows. It made me reevaluate everything I'd seen so far, made me realize how much depth there was, the potential that was coming. It was, I don't know, I feel like I was already sold on a show at that moment, but I was really sold on a show at that moment. So.
Yeah. Okay, what about something that you would like to see most in the last episode?
I kind of agree with Shea. I want to see some sort of scroll of where everyone's at now. Some sort of just an image of and what I kind of want it to be is a lot of parallel scenes, very similar imagery of Gendry on some throne, just depressed that Arya's not there. Dany on the throne, just staring, cold 1,000-yard stare. Sansa in the north, everyone's in their seats of power, completely dissatisfied with it.
Okay. Well, for my answer,
Sam and Gilly happy.
Tormund and Ghost just looking epic in the snow,
wrestling
rugged
together, playing fetch with a little skull, little child of the forest skull. So for myself, favorite moment, you named some good ones. It's hard to not name Jenny's song as well. For this season, it was really huge. To add on to what Ashea said, the fact that it was a surprise and it was a nugget from the history of A Song of Ice and Fire, that's part of what made it so unexpected, and the way it fit into the scenes. It was telling a story that was relevant to all these characters who were getting a montage, and then it ended with Jon and Dany where Jenny's song, the lyrics, talk about a king giving up his throne for the person he loves, and it's like you could see how that would tie in. So yeah, I just thought that was really well done. It is I also agree with her. That's a bit of recency bias, but as far as recently, that was really good. And as far as a different past moment, I really, really liked back in the bathtub scene, Jaime and Brienne. It was one of the scenes that they just did really, really well. It was a scene that made Jaime's character different for so many people. It was the turning point for Jaime's character, who's such an important character because he lasts so long and he's a favorite of so many. And that was the moment that really sold him for a lot of people as a really compelling character. And also, as fans of the books, it was a scene that got 11 out of 10 type praise for how well they handled it because of the acting and just they kept the dialogue pretty similar to the way it was written in the books, which didn't need to be improved on, So that one really comes to mind. And but also maybe one other, if I could throw out, I'd like to say,
if you get one more, I get one more.
Okay. That's fair. We haven't gone 2 hours yet. We got a little time. Well, you go ahead if you have one ready.
Well, I have 14 ready. I was going to say, actually, when we've even addressed this question a little bit before, how many people are like, what are you going to do when the show ends? You guys, there's so much we can do. Like, we generally have been, for this anyway, for me anyway, it's been like each episode.
Yeah.
Each episode, we do 3 episodes,
Mm-hmm.
But it would be so easy to do. And we even did. We did an episode on Jaime. We could do an episode on Jon. We could do an episode on Winterfell.
Yeah.
We could do an episode on the Starks. We could do an episode on Dragons. There's so many things.
So
we could do an episode on our favorite moments. We could easily sit here for 2 hours and talk about our favorite moments. So.
We can also get back to the lovely book material.
Yeah.
All of the above. Yeah, so you know what? Actually, one really favorite moment that I thought was because it was kind of really unexpected, and it's not something we'll get in the books. I like well done scenes on the show that we can't get in the books because of whose point of view they're from. Like I really liked the scene of the White Walker taking Craster's baby north. That was creepy, and it was the baby crying was that touches your subconscious hearing a baby in distress like that. Our cats were circling the TV, like wondering what the heck was going on because the cats were responding to the baby crying. And it was chilling and it was neat. It was like a piece of lore that we don't get directly from the book. So I thought that was really cool. But yeah, we're just going to sit here naming favorite scenes if we don't quit this. But I didn't answer the what would I like to see before it ends. So I'll throw that out there. I definitely agree with you all about seeing some sort of montage wrapping people up. But I most want to see an ending that leaves the most number of people at least feeling somewhat satisfied. I don't want a lot of the negative feelings that came up after episode 3 and after episode 5. I want at least some of that to put to rest. I care about how like seeing everybody argue a lot. That hurts my soul. I like harmony in the community, and I would like for people to debating is good, arguing is not. Kind of my general attitude. Obviously, sometimes just has to go that way. But that's where the line is. I think debating is healthy, arguing is not. And I'm just as guilty as anyone falling into arguing when I should be debating. But that's what I want. I want it to end in a way that people feel at least like it wasn't ruined for them. The ending didn't ruin all the greatness of the prior 7 seasons, the acting, the cinematography, all the other stuff that makes it really good, the music. Like I really hope they get Ramin Djawadi to do the prequel show. Like please, number 1. Stuff like that. So I hope that people leave with a good feeling. Whatever that means has to happen for that to happen. Let's hope
John's reunited with Ghost.
Looks like a couple of questions snuck in here, 1 or 2. From Kurt Dana, if George R. Martin writes an epilogue, time jump, Aria returning home to see what's different, maybe we can get a miniseries post-book release with the returning cast. Well, that's interesting. I'm guessing that it's not super feasible because so many of these actors are just about to jump into the next phase of their reaping the rewards of being a famous actor on Game of Thrones. Some of them have already started that, and they're all going to be not all, but a lot of them are going to be really high-paid actors and actresses, and it's going to might be hard to bring them all back. Then again, if they did some sort of Game of Thrones epilogue show, they would be able to generate a lot of money for that. And
Larry David got the Seinfeld cast together.
That is true. It's a smaller cast, but he did do it. Yeah, it's always possible. I'm optimistic. I wouldn't be too optimistic, but We'll see. We'll see. I think there's more optimism about what's going to happen with these prequel shows, though. Shows plural, because it's entirely possible more than one gets made. And we pass on what we can when we start to learn more about the show. It hasn't started filming yet, but it's supposed to start filming, I believe, in September. And so if the pilot's picked up, then we'll know pretty soon after. So best of luck to them, and because that would be good luck for all of us. If it's a good show and gets made, well, then we all win. All right. Any final thoughts, final predictions before we wrap it up today? And then we'll come back on Monday.
15 minutes under 2 hours.
Right on. Well, they showed us so little about they gave away so little.
That's what we want. We want us under 2 hours.
Yeah, it's a little better to be under 2 hours. It's when we go beyond 2 hours, there's nothing wrong with that. That's because we have a lot to talk about. But hey, when they hide the details from us, that shortens the episode. Nothing wrong with that.
I think I could go on for 60 more minutes if you need, if that's what we're called for here.
Okay, so thank you very much, everybody, for coming. Appreciate the glorious amount of feedback. Y'all had a lot of thoughts on what's coming and a lot of expectations, a lot of predictions, whether you came live and watched and participated in the live stream, whether you jumped in on Flick, whether you jumped in on the Facebook group, whether you sent us messages on Twitter or via Patreon, or some combination or all of the above. We appreciate the participation. It's what makes these live streams extra good, is getting y'all's feedback and ideas, because we definitely don't catch everything. And we look forward to experiencing this final episode with y'all, and then whatever comes after that. So until next time, Valar rewatch us, Valar reread us.
Valar, follow me on Twitter.